Hello again, I'm Greg. This is the final part of our journey through modern hermeneutics. We're trying to get to the point where we can encounter the world itself, yes, through the original lenses of the social world, but also through the revelations and enlightenments contained in the life world, both of human creation, but then the apex of this we found somewhat dismayingly was a rejection of the world itself and everything in it. So that would include everything of the human imagination. So, how can we kind of twist this, if you will, give it a turn in a more positive direction? That's how we're going to try to conclude here. And then, one final part after this in the final episode, a summary of our entire journey together. So here we're going to, of course, fall back on our fourth and final form of modern hermeneutics, that dialogic, associated with, more than anyone else, Heidegger's famous student Hans Gadamer. So this is touching at the world in its otherness. Again, an alien kind of journey for human beings, but I feel a necessary one. So, if the turning away from the world is the negative synthesis, which upshifts what is human and what is alien, then our very engagement with all three forms of world is that positive. It remains then. If our hermeneutic argument is going to attest to the existence of this alternative, which is presented as more salutary to futurity, but as well simply a more ethical manner of living on, to evidence how it is through dialogue that such can be achieved. We have said before that dialogue in its authenticity both risks the entire selfhood as well as is a vehicle for the dialectic. I am willing to put it all on the table because I know she too is willing to do the same. Neither interlocutor knows ahead of time what will come of this shared gambit, but any synthesis will, by definition, contain and thence maintain elements of both myself and herself, the thesis and the antithesis, and in whatever order pertaining to who initiated the encounter in the first place. Insofar as the experience of another human being can be gainsayed, this is our model for the wider and much less familiar encounter with the world itself. The human other is part of not only the social world, as am I myself, but as well she is an object within the universe of discourse, which is the bulk of the life world. As a woman, she is the subject of various applied sciences, including medicine, and she is championed by feminism as a serious scholarly discipline. She is also, in whatever contradistinction it may prove to be through myth, a siren, a Valkyrie, a huntress, an Aphrodite, and so on. In light of the archetypes, she is a mother, a nurturer, a rule enforcer, and if typecast by popular economic culture, she is a model, actress, nurse, clerk, or teacher of children. All of these persona, and yet others, besides, does today's woman have to overcome when viewed only as an object. For myself, as a man, there is a list of similar length and varied pedigree. Our interactions within the socius can and do only hail from certain elements of such lists, pending social circumstance. All of this dialogue itself must overtake and thence overcome not only our sense of the alien world, but all that is alien to ourselves within the world we already know. In short, the fourth and latest form, most recent, of hermeneutics is most difficult, though still basic problem, is to disclose first my Dasein, my being there, in the face of the social world, and my humanity, by way of, but not completely defined through, the life world. It is, at the very least, a daunting issue to confront alone, which is precisely why dialogue as dialectic is necessary to do so. Her otherness is the leverage needed to promote a nascent disclosure of what is mine own most, and to begin to make distinct the selfhood which runs along the lines of the socius alone. Recall that though we may imagine ourselves in fictive relation to an archetype or other such figure in order to perform a persona in social life, both public and private, this stage-named presence cannot directly inform us of our authenticity as a design like our own. And the personal self who is no longer dressed in its whatness. Yet even here, this is but a first step. Engaging one another as persons is assuredly healthy for us both, but it is neither phenomenologically authentic nor hermeneutically inclined. For beyond this, what is of mine own most she too shares. Fittingly, it is in our interpretations of existence, as beings of history and language, where we shall discover the differences that yet make us two, instead of one. When we begin to interpret our existence, we take ourselves beyond the simple description of events. I am here in the now because of a series of happenings, some beyond my control, and some based upon choices I have consciously made, in light of my recognized motives, though as well being influenced by unconscious motifs. Yet for hermeneutics, this represents a set of outcomes and not the process through which I came to understand my current situation. We must rather ask why instead of merely how. I am who I am in this very moment, with her, and through witnessing her, do the same thing for herself in my witness. Awkwardly, the authenticating queries begin to be voiced. Why am I how I am? Is their paragon theme. In many cases, people begin this dialogic journey by speaking about family background, their relationships with their parents and siblings, their dedication or loyalty to place, or even specific landscape. It is not a surprise that psychoanalysis also begins with these kinds of tropes, with an aspiration to use them to populate its own case study of the persona within the person, and indeed on the way to the cure, allowing the analysand to understand how they can be the person within the persona. So in psychoanalytic work, whether it's Freudian or Jungian, the idea is you want to flip that script, right? You don't want to understand the persona as if it were the person. You want to be able to live the person who is within that persona, somehow enshrouded by it or perhaps even overshadowed by it. For Freud, this is part of the species essence, and one must come to acknowledge and accept the implications of being an evolutionary and scientific object. For Jung, rather, it is the mythic leitmotif that illuminates me as a figure performing, in part, a timeless act, and therefore I must learn to understand how my action in the world is an expression, however distant and personalized, of this or that act from the other world. Their link is the collective unconscious, which in Freud had been lensed and individuated so that its sensus communis can only be recalled through dreams. The other world is a dream for modernity, and it has been replaced by the otherness of the world itself. This is a very, very important point, right? In traditional metaphysics, we have world and other world. But today, we have the other world has been replaced by the otherness of the world itself. And it is to this third form of world that our halting but resolute attempts at dialogue move forward. I get a sense of the experience of the radically alien quality of the world itself through what is different between myself and herself. Our experiences of the social world differ along party lines, as it were, and we will inevitably have different knowledge by way of the life world. Through sharing our interpretation of both, we come to the edge of the world as it is, in its worlding. This phenomenological entity proclaims silently its devotion only to itself. Recall that the world at large requires nothing human, either to continue to function or to make manifest its form. We, in order to enter into its once sidereal landscape, need to begin to think of ourselves as the aliens, interloping and perhaps even trespassing. We are hushed by the presence of raw nature if we seek a wilderness moment wherein nothing of culture can be immediately perceived. This is one of my most cherished things to do, to walk along a wilderness beach that has been cleaned of logging detritus, or to sit still and silent upon it and let the animal life around me recommence, as it does. I am aware of my singularity to a vanishing point. Nature continues without my ken and without my control. In itself, its own ways are simple. Animals forage each and every day, only pausing to reproduce annually. The only other event is the odd confrontation between them, but mostly they are in an aleatory harmony with one another. The music of nature is a melody bereft of song. This kind of scene gives me the impression of the world itself and is one of the only apertures onto said world. We know that for our ancestors, the natural world was actively uninviting, and for the archaic worldview, it was regarded as a patent and potent enemy. This is why the folk tales of social contract successors have as one of their chief tropes the diminishment of its powers, expressed through mocking and demeaning caricatures of its most powerful denizens. For the Amazonians, the jaguar represented an existential threat, and so his character in myth is a bumbling moron of epic proportion, counseled by a tiny bird who, in reality, was insignificant. The bird is, in turn, an expression of our shared human insignificance over against nature and the world itself. Similarly, in the mythology of the northwest coastal rainforests of North America, Raven's wisdom comes to him only haltingly, and through making sundry errors of judgment and character. Here, this creature is indeed representing the very learning process of humanity itself, both in its individual expression and writ large as a history of culture and thence the species as a whole. Raven is often cast as a dreamer, too desiring of his own goals, and it is his mate, Squirrel, who provides a common sense foil to his misadventures. In tandem, they represent the human imagination as counterfoiled by human reason. As such, they are a projection of both into a non-human world, as is understood to be one of the effects of mythology in general and specifically cosmogonical narratives. This is the human being attempting to find a place for himself in an objectively anonymous realm. And yet we too are of nature, however distantiated we have in the interim become towards it. In nature do we fathom our sources, even if we can never witness our origins. And like the other creatures, we must find a way to live out each day both granted and beckoning to us. There is some sort of connection here yet, and it is our deeply held resentment toward the perenniality of nature that speaks to both our will to life, as we have already stated, and as well our fatalism regarding our inability to will life itself. In dialogue with the other, I do not construe her as nature, truth, the good, or beauty, but rather take her in her difference and sameness alike to be the resonance of the connection we both share with the world itself. Through this same dialogue as dialectic, I give up my druthers one by one to the sensible supernature of interlocution, something I can only personify and fantasticize with nature as the ongoing manifest of the radical world other. I give up my lenses, and in return receive her own. Then, in returning to what I once imagined were the only manners of seeing the world, I am now widened, given perspective, by a synthesis of understanding which is also a hermeneutic self-understanding. The world itself remains forever distant, but now I can at least observe its limb, walk toward its receding horizon, and in this find the counterbalance to that otherness, that existentially radical other which presents its own horizon coming at me in the very opposite direction. Thank you.